The risk of a recession keeps going up from 20%. Then some experts say 40%. Now some are even saying it's a 50-50 chance that the United States will join other Western countries in having a recession this year. I'm going to tell you how you can look beyond your own borders and protect yourself from a recession in your country. I'm Andrew Henderson. I'm the founder of Nomad Capitalist. We help people with $1 million or more legally protect their assets overseas, live overseas to lower their taxes, and get second passports to protect their families. And we keep hearing how the United States could enter a recession this year. We've been told how conditions in some European countries like the UK and Germany are bleak. The potential for an ongoing trade war with the US is dimming the prospects of those countries even more. But experts are saying what's happening in the United States could lead to their star falling as well. And we've seen in the first quarter of this year, U.S. stocks significantly underperforming their European counterparts. That doesn't happen that often in terms of actual return. They're underperforming their Asian counterparts. I've been telling you for years that part of my portfolio is tax-friendly, higher dividend-paying stocks in Asia. I'm not an investment advisor. That's not my advice to you, but it's looking pretty good so far this year. And I'm going to tell you what you can do to protect yourself from a recession. Let's first go over the recession indicators. There's 5 of them now raising alarm in the United States, according to Newsweek. The first is consumer confidence, one of the most important gauges of how the economy is going. And optimism about the economy in the United States is not good. One expert, Jeffrey Roach at LPL, says a change in feelings about the economic backdrop is often a harbinger of things to come and precedes a downshift in consumer spending and business investment. Basically, if people don't feel good, they're not going to spend money and they're going to precipitate a recession. What's one of the things I've been telling you for years? People in Western countries, high-tax, legacy brand Western countries, they feel like it's harder to get ahead. They are politically disgruntled. If you are an entrepreneur, if you are wealthy, that is going to lead in the long run to worse conditions, including higher taxes for you. But right now, what it could do is cause those people to say, things are getting tight. We're not going to spend money. Here's the result, 7.2% drop between just February and March. That's a pretty big drop in the Consumer Confidence Index that came in below expectations, marking the 4th consecutive month of declines, brought the index to its lowest level since January 2021 in the middle of the pandemic. The Expectations Index, which weighs consumers' forecasts for economic conditions in the short term, tumbled to 65.2. You might have seen this headline, lowest reading in 12 years, and below the 80-point threshold that the organizers of that say usually signals a recession ahead. So 80 is a recession ahead. It's at 65.2, lowest level in 12 years, just as we were not long out of a recession 12 years ago. Other results from the University of Michigan's widely watched Consumer Sentiment Index also revealed a drastic decline in Americans' economic optimism in March. By the way, this is not political. This is not about Biden. This is not about Trump. This is not about anybody. This is about people are saying there's a significant chance of trouble ahead. Credit card late payments and default rates are up. Business uncertainty. They're saying the business uncertainty index climbed 4 points to 104, the second highest reading since the index began in 1973. The percentage of respondents who believed it was a good time to expand their business experienced its steepest monthly drop since the beginning of the pandemic. Meanwhile, the net percentage of owners expecting economic improvement declined by 10 points to just 37%. So basically 1 in 3 thinks the economy is getting better. Labor costs, of course, are getting worse. One thing I've told you that I've done for years, I have a business that can operate anywhere. We have clients from all over the world. We have staff all over the world, and we get to adjust. If your business is tied to one place, you should work on that. Can you get more customers? Can you diversify the staff? Can you move part of it somewhere else? What can you do to take back the control to where you're not a slave to what's happening in just one country? We can go on and on through these reports. The Trade Policy Uncertainty Index, you've seen levels not seen since 2019. Inflation expectations. Oh, you thought we'd solved inflation? Well, not so much. From 4.3% in February to 4.9% is the expectation in March. That's the highest reading in the last couple of years since November of 2022, and the third consecutive month of unusually large increases, which is half a percentage point or more. Now, the recession is by definition 2 quarters of contraction accompanied by a drop in employment. And I'm going to tell you how you can protect yourself against that. Now, in employment, one other expert said, even if the U.S. does not enter a proper recession, which is defined as those 6 months of declining economic activity, the outlook for economic growth has soured. That's according to the Atlanta Federal Reserve, Morgan Stanley, and other experts are all saying that. If you're an American, J.P. Morgan said there could be lasting damage. One of the things that I've been telling you is whether you agree with the trade wars or not, from my perspective, I'm the Nomad Capitalist. I left the United States many years ago. I'm looking at this from afar, not being in the United States. I'm looking at all the countries. Even Canada is saying this. Europe is saying this. Countries all around the world are saying the U.S. does not seem like a good ally anymore. We need to find other people to sell our stuff to. Now, you can say, oh, there's nowhere else to go. I think what we've seen in recent years is there's lots of places to go. You know, I was against Gavin Newsom saying, where are you going to go outside of California during a pandemic? A lot of places, Gavin. And where are people going to sell their goods? A lot of places. We host Nomad Capitalist Live, our event every year in Kuala Lumpur. People who come to Kuala Lumpur are often pleasantly surprised by how nice it is, how much, consumer spending and growth and things are happening. There are lots of markets like that where people want more products. People are spending more money. They have more discretionary income. That may not be the entire solution to Canada or Germany's problems, but these countries have more options. And so what is that going to do? The United States just selling stuff to itself is probably not going to keep the economy going at the same pace that it was. And I've said if you're an American or an American business, you might be left out in the cold in some of these places where, banks in some countries already don't want Americans. It's harder to diversify your assets as an American. What happens when they don't want your products? What happens when they don't want your money? What happens when they don't want to have you be a resident in their country? I'm not saying there's going to be widespread application of that, but I am saying your options as an American were already somewhat fewer than an option of, let's say, a Canadian or Australian. That could get worse. J.P. Morgan economists see a 40% recession chance and risks to so-called exorbitant privilege. This is Dateline Singapore from Reuters. Not only is there a 40% chance of a U.S. recession this year and risk of lasting damage to the country's standing as an investment destination as trust is undermined in U.S. government. Where we stand now is of heightened concern about the U.S. economy, said Bruce Kasman. He's the J.P. Morgan investment bank chief global economist. He said he has not revised any forecast, but he has a 40% recession risk in his outlook, up for 30% at the start of the year, as U.S. stocks have been sold off. 95% of economists polled by Reuters last week across Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. said recession risks in their economies had increased as a result of tariffs. Now, again, not political. Maybe you love Trump, but hopefully you want to make sure that you're getting wealthier. If you live in the United States, that's the point, right? You live there, you're a citizen there because, hey, we can get wealthier better than other countries. I disagree with that. But if you're not getting wealthier in the United States, you might want to look for greener pastures. Now, no matter who you are, there is a reason to diversify. So this is not just about the United States. Obviously, if something happens in the United States, if your business has U.S. customers or is somehow connected, there's going to be some ripple effect. And I'm not going to give you the normal, don't get an adjustable rate mortgage or don't quit your job. What you want to do is you want to start spreading your assets, your business, and yourself around the world. If you've watched me for years, you know some of what I'm going to say. But let me hopefully bring some new ideas here in the light of a potential recession. Number one is, during a recession, particularly in the United States, you could see pressure on some smaller and mid-size banks. Go back to the Credit Suisse debacle a couple of years ago in Switzerland, and then look around that same time, some of the mid-level banks in the United States. They had some problems. You saw some of the biggest bank failures at banks that people pretty much thought were pretty safe. And all it takes is the U.S. government saying, yeah, we're not going to increase the FDIC insurance. Yeah, we can't find a buyer. Yeah, we're not going to cover you above the 250. If you're a high net worth individual and you're keeping money liquid because maybe you're concerned that stocks are going to go down further, you're keeping your powder dry, some of those mid-level banks, they just went out of business. And if you're keeping more than $250,000, you could have a problem. So what I want you to do is have bank accounts around the world in the safest places that you can get those banks. Generally, people think about Swiss banks. That, for Americans in particular, is generally more feasible in a trust structure. That's what we've often done for clients, people who are setting up offshore trusts as a passive investment structure to hold things for estate tax purposes and to protect their assets offshore. You may be able to get a Swiss bank there, for example, $500,000, $1 million. Otherwise, harder for Americans to get those banks. But you can go plenty of other places and get bank accounts in your own name. Some of the strongest banks in the world are in Singapore. You've got 3 big Singapore banks, and they're pretty much all in the top 15 banks in the world among the people who rate these banks. Americans can go to Canada. Some of those banks are ranked relatively high on those same lists, more so than American banks. They are statistically, according to magazines like The Banker, safer. Now, I understand that you might be concerned about politically what's Canada going to do to your money. We saw bank accounts frozen a couple of years ago. So you can consider the political ramifications. But from a pure, bank safety perspective, the statistics say Canadian banks are safer. Americans still can go to some of those banks and open non-resident accounts. It's harder to do so, and you have fewer options than a non-American, but you could open accounts in places like Singapore. We've talked about more far-flung destinations, which I feel very comfortable with, countries like Georgia, for example. If you get a residence permit in another country, you may be able to open a bank account there. Dubai is a place more and more people are moving to. You can get a residence permit simply by putting money in the bank to the tune of about $545,000. That's a more expensive one. But in Georgia, you can put $100 in the bank and you can get an account, or $20,000 approximately in the bank, and you can get your own banker and a priority bank account. So there's a whole spectrum of places that you can open a bank account. By the way, those Georgian banks, the 2 big ones, are traded on the London Stock Exchange. Doesn't mean they're untouchable, but it means they're not as perhaps small ball as you might think. And so you can get bank accounts around the world. Heck, get a couple of them. And heck, while you're getting them, one of my big things is if you have liquidity, can I get a residence permit or can I get a citizenship just by moving some money somewhere else? If you're concerned about a recession, you can get a residence permit where you could live somewhere else. Let's say your country goes down the wrong direction. Let's say there becomes civil unrest. Let's say the politicians raise taxes because there is a recession. They're going to bring more money in. They have to hit you, the rich guy, harder. Wouldn't it be the worst thing in the world to have a tax-friendly place that you could move, to have a safe place that you could move? The UAE, for example, meets that criteria. Panama, you can get a residence permit, meets that criteria. A number of countries in Asia, like Thailand, meet that criteria. Open bank accounts and then see, hey, what can I get? Can I get any benefits by putting that money in the bank beyond just being able to, for example, also moving out of US dollars? Maybe you think that with everything that's happening with the trade wars, they want to weaken the US dollar. Well, what if you put your money in euros? What if you put your money in Swiss francs? What if you put your money in other currencies? And while you're doing that, let's talk about the Georgian lari, for example. None of this is investment advice. This is just me sharing ideas. The Georgian lari, you can get a 12% interest on the Georgian lari. It's been relatively stable in recent years against the US dollar. The Armenian dram is one of the most appreciated currencies against the US dollar in recent years. You can get 9.5% interest in an Armenian bank, and they have European, French banks, for example, that are there among their own local banks. And you can get a residence permit by getting a bank account and then making some investments locally. Most people aren't going to want to live in Armenia or go there to escape a recession, but there's so many different ways that you can slice this. And so if you diversify cash into more banks, into more countries, in case of bank issues in your country, not only will you protect if the government just decides one day and says, hey, you know what, everyone owes us 20% of their money. That's happened in places like Cyprus, for example. But you can find the strongest banks. You can then access other currencies in those banks because if you're an American, your U.S. bank probably only lets you hold U.S. dollars. So what if you think the dollar is going to be weaker? The bank account's a conduit to that other currency, potentially higher interest rates, potentially you get an immigration benefit if you want to have a safe place to go if your country goes in the wrong direction. There's a lot you can get from bank accounts. And again, Switzerland might be $1 million minimum. Singapore might be $250,000 minimum. The UAE is going to be that $545,000 if you want to get the golden visa, but you can put not very much in that bank account if you just go and open an account. Georgia could be $100. So you've got a whole list of options. Make sure that you don't lose the money that you have. I like Charlie Munger. Don't count on getting rich twice, and particularly if you're keeping your powder dry and building liquidity in bank accounts, you want to do that. You can say the same thing for brokerage accounts, by the way. And by the way, if you're not an American and you're keeping money in U.S. accounts, understand there's a thing called U.S. situs assets. And if you die with more than $60,000 of them, you will be subject big league to U.S. estate tax. And so you want to review, if you're a foreigner holding money in the U.S., how that's done. We've had clients that potentially have saved millions of dollars by just making a quick restructure that they weren't aware of. The second thing you can do is stock diversification. When I saw the tariffs, plunging markets in the U.S., so I want to look at the portfolio, and I'd log into my European portfolio and it'd be up. I'd log in to see China and Hong Kong and Singapore, and it'd be up. And so, China and Singapore are up. Mexico is up this year, although not as much. It's been a bit bumpier. The U.S. is down. And so you can go to a lot of brokerage accounts. People mentioned it's just one, Interactive Brokers. You can own Singapore and Hong Kong and Mexico and European equities in that account. You can hold some of the more exotic, equities, like particularly where I spend part of my time in Southeast Asia. Malaysia, Thai, Indonesia, Philippines equities, those are harder to get to. But the big international exchanges, you can get through international brokerage accounts and you can own those. So if I can diversify my stocks, one thing that I've gone through just on a personal level is I've said, if I have a U.S. Electric utility company that pays a dividend and the stock's gone up because it's been more resistant than the rest of the market to some of this stuff, I can sell that. Predicting some chaos, I can put that into a much higher yielding electric utility somewhere else in a market that people aren't as familiar with. And it may be long term, I won't have as much capital appreciation, but I can ride out the storm for now, collect a higher yield, and then evaluate where I am later. I think the more you diversify internationally, the more you get comfortable with it. One of the things you can talk about, I've seen a lot of headlines in the United States, particularly, is the real estate markets have gotten real toppy. Now, could this help ease the frustrations that people who are renting and don't own a house? For sure. But if you own property, they're talking about all the markets that have topped out. I've seen Austin, I've seen Nashville, places that people, it's going through the roof. Well, you're seeing a lot more supply. You're seeing time on market is longer. If you live in these places, you could evaluate your market. Is it going to get any better than this? Can I sell my property? Am I willing to move overseas potentially? Am I willing to move somewhere else in the country? Am I willing to rent somewhere for a while? And maybe I can rent where I live and I can spend part of my time starting to travel and evaluate some of these opportunities. The bottom line is, if you think that you're going to ride out a recession just entirely being focused on one country, you're going to have a lot harder time than someone who's diversified across different countries. And I think, in the years to come, recessions are not just going to be financial. I think there will be more social unrest and civil unrest. I think those are going to be issues where there's actually going to be a safety component, and there's actually going to be politicians which are going to be doing some more nefarious things to deal with that coming up. One of the things that I like about some of the markets where I have property is mortgages aren't so plentiful. You go to some countries in South America, you might have in the low double-digit percentages of homes with mortgages. In the U.S., there's something like 60 million mortgages, whereas in Colombia, for example, we've talked about over the years, a lot of people don't have a mortgage. And so prices may not shoot up as much. They also don't come falling down as much. And there may be other events that cause prices to go up or cause prices to go down. But it's more organic than driven by where are mortgage rates. And so I think if you were able to find a property, I pay cash for properties, and properties that I buy are a lot cheaper than they are in the West and in the United States. If you've got a property that you think is topped out, that could be an opportunity to take some cash off the table before a recession hits that property. And again, this is not investment advice. I'm not telling you, you've got to figure out where the values are. What I'm telling you is there's a lot of places around the world where the cost of living is lower, the taxes are lower, property prices are lower. Where I'm at, part-time in Kuala Lumpur, where Nomad Capitalist Live is, you can pay under $2,000 per square meter. That's well under $200 per square foot. And you can buy some really nice properties. You can own land in a country like Malaysia. Your cost of living is about 35 cents on the dollar. And you can potentially pay very, very low taxes by living there. If I was open-minded to going somewhere and riding out a recession, I'd be looking at, can I take money of my property off the table? The other thing I want to do is, if I have a business, I want to diversify my business income globally. And so I recently did an interview with Seyfa Dinamos. He's one of the speakers at Nomad Capitalist Live. He wrote the Bitcoin Standard, and he said, are you guys targeting China? He said, hey, where are your up and coming markets? Because we do work with a lot of Americans. I think right now, British and Canadian citizens are kind of the biggest market because, I mean, the UK is having its own problems. We have some Germans and we have people from all over the world. And my issue is always, if Americans are going to be fewer due to a recession, where am I making that up? Now, I quite frankly think if there's a recession, you need what we're talking about all the more. If you're running a business and you're going into a recession, the first thing you can do is, could you move your business overseas to eliminate all the money you're paying in taxes? If you're going to move somewhere, let's say you cash out your house, let's say you move somewhere else. Well, when you're moving, move your business with you. I mean, don't leave a business in a high tax country if you don't have to. Now, if you're on a factory or something, there may always have to be a serious component that's, where that factory is. But even then, I mean, we've had clients and we have a whole network of tax experts here where you could put part of that business where you're doing the sales or we're doing certain distribution or logistics. That could be overseas. You could lower your taxes. If you run a business like mine where you could be anywhere and run it from anywhere, you could move that business pretty much anywhere and you could reduce your taxes. Now you've got a competitive edge against your competitors. They're sitting in the US, paying 40% by the time they distribute it to themselves. 20%, I guess, if it's just, a corporation and they're just reinvesting it. But I mean, no matter where you live, the US or anywhere else in the West, paying very high taxes is a competitive disadvantage. So the first thing is, can you move your business and yourself overseas? Just moving the business to the Cayman Islands and you staying in your country is not generally going to lower your taxes in most Western countries. But once you're doing that, why don't you target some more markets? Where else can you sell your products? This is one reason why I believe, and I've been saying this for a few months now, U.S. citizenship could become even more toxic because whether it's forcing TikTok to be divested to U.S. investors, whether it's the trade wars, people are losing confidence in the U.S. and stuff. You're a foreigner. You're probably not going to want to invest as much in the United States. I'm watching markets overseas. I don't remember which market it was, where not very long ago, it was 7% of the investors were from overseas. Now it's 20% in a period of not that long. You're seeing more money pile into markets that weren't previously appreciated, and you're seeing money coming out of U.S. markets. And so ask yourself, where else can I sell my products? And I ideally think that, long term, this is not a recession issue, but long term, if the U.S. loses its standing, I'd much rather be a St. Lucian, which is a passport that I got by investment, or rather be any of my other citizenships going and doing business around the world and being more welcome to open companies and get residence permits and do deals than coming as the American. And people say, perhaps, maybe our company's a policy we don't deal with Americans. Not my company, but perhaps there's some company out there in the same way that you'll see in the U.S. Oh, yeah, Florida passed some law we don't like, so California is prohibiting its government to spend any money in Florida. What if companies in other countries or entire countries put serious restrictions on you can't deal with Americans or American-owned companies? To avoid a recession, there's always an opportunity somewhere. And so Safety asked, are you targeting China? China right now, the stock market's doing very well. People are going to have more money. That could be a good place to sell your products. Now, everyone's products are different. Where's the best market? But I mean, if you're selling in the U.S., can you sell it to Western Europe? But again, is Western Europe going to want something coming from the U.S.? So can you move that business to somewhere in Europe? Could you get a residence permit for that business in Europe? Could you go to low corporate tax Ireland and hire some people and you bring a critical skill and you get a residence permit and your personal taxes can be very, very low under the non-dom program. And then you're in the European Union and your company does the same stuff that you do in the US and you sell it to other companies, other people in the European Union. Now, again, some countries like the UK and Germany, the UK obviously not the EU, but some of those have their own problems as well. But where is the opportunity for what it is that you're selling? Go there and get out of your country. There's some African markets that are going to be up 25% this year. So there's always somewhere up, there's always somewhere down. The last thing I'll say is look to the future, right? I think a lot of people, when they think about a recession, is how do I bat down the hatches right now? I want to look 5, 10, 20 years into the future. Not only which markets are going to be big 5, 10, 20 years in the future, but how am I going to make sure that I can access them? There's a business that I know where they go to the most frontier markets. They rent a prime office space. They open an office and they expect almost no revenue for like 2 or 3 years while they establish themselves as a services company in these markets like Ivory Coast, Cambodia. And they go and they build, and then they start selling stuff to the local wealthy population once they've built up this reputation, because they know there's a market for their products there if they just get in early. So I think that, this is an opportunity to look far ahead of where's the ball going to be 5, 10, 20 years from now. Getting a second passport, for me, is a way to hedge against potential toxicity as the world becomes more multipolar, as the global south could increasingly say, we don't want stuff from the U.S. Look at Africa. Now, a lot of products, you're not going to have a market in Africa, but Africa, to me, it is a great frontier in the coming decades. Look at all the stuff that's happening geopolitically in Africa. It's saying we don't want the West. They're going to be much more interested in doing business with someone whose company is in Mauritius and whose nationality is St. Lucian they got by investment than they are to deal with someone who's French or American coming and selling their product from there. Now, again, that may not apply to you, but find that example for yourself. I'm not saying to change your identity for any weird purposes or to hide out, but I'm saying if you can get a second passport to where you could eventually detach yourself from the U.S., and that's your business identity, that could be a good thing. Incorporating your business overseas could be a good thing to open up new markets. While you're doing that, could you lower your taxes? While you're doing that, could you move overseas and start developing those markets? To me, as an entrepreneur, this is a ripple effect to protect yourself from a recession. And I think in the long run, not just protect yourself from a 1-year recession, but set your business up for success that no matter what happens, you're covered anywhere. So if you would like to talk to someone about this, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. We look for folks who have $1 million or more in liquid assets. Doesn't mean if you have less, we don't like you. Just we do stuff that is bespoke and it's involved and it comes with a certain cost. Ideally, you get a very quick ROI by hiring us to help you reduce your taxes overseas, protect your assets, open bank accounts somewhere else. That comes with a fee. And we do charge a fee to help advise you on all that stuff under one roof with all the experts in all the different countries that I've spent about 15 years meeting and building and creating the service that I would have wanted. And so I think there's many reasons to do this besides just preparing for a recession. And I think that our best clients are those who aren't reacting to something, but those who are being proactive and preparing for something. I think you need a second passport whether there's a recession coming or not. But I think the world is going through these tremendous changes, and we can help you navigate that. I don't think that the U.S. is going to be this, it will be a serious economy. It's not going to be the only one and only serious place because there are so many opportunities in the countries that we talk about. And so nomadcapitalist.com/apply is where we help you create your own holistic plan to be a nomad capitalist, to be international, to take back the power and not just pay the tax rate you're told to pay, to not have to hire everybody within a radius of your home, to not have to only sell to people in your own country. It's time to go global. I think it's a solution for a coming recession. Certainly, I think you can feel more comfortable knowing that, hey, even if our banks, get shaken up a little bit, my money's also over there. And so it's both defensive and offensive. Go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply if you'd like some help with this. We'd be happy to talk to you about it. If we can help you, we'll tell you. But that's how I would prepare. And when I'm asked, what are all the markets you're selling in? What are the markets where you're invested in? I feel a lot better knowing it's not just one place.